All righty. So, you made some headlines this past week in a fashion that I personally found admirable, or that I was pleased by. Just as some background, can you describe what the process is to become an elector in Maine? I'm sure it varies somewhat state to state, but what was the process for you in Maine?
Yes, it's different all over the country. Just a little background. The Constitution talks about, establishes the Electoral College, but says absolutely nothing about how members are selected or what their obligations are, or it just says states are going to select somebody and they're going to send them, they're going to do the voting. In Maine, we elect our members to the Electoral College at our state convention, state Democratic convention, Republican convention, and the Green Party, which is an organized party in Maine, has its own convention. The Democratic convention was in May, so I was elected an elector long before Secretary Clinton even had the nomination, let alone the and long before the election in November. And it's a simple procedure. It's the same procedure as running for a national delegate. You take out a petition form, you have it signed by a certain number of delegates to the state convention, and you turn it in. And then when we get into our county caucuses at the state convention, you vote for the delegates, and that's when they vote for members of the Democratic National Committee, and it's also when they vote for electors.
Right, and so Bernie Sanders won the Maine caucus handily over Hillary. And at the time that the Maine convention happened, and when electors were voted on, the primary was still seen as a live issue. It was still fairly contentious. There was a lot of passion, sentiment going on in either direction. And so, did you have a sense at the time when you stood for that role that it was going to come to this? Or if I had talked to you in May, what would you have predicted as to what the situation would be now, in terms of your role as an elector and the amount of discretion that you would be personally exercising?
Well, if you had talked to me in May, I would have said yes. The convention, the July convention in Philadelphia, is still looking pretty good. We're holding our own. We've had a good event. We're going to Philadelphia. We're aware of the superdelegate issue. We spent a lot of time in Maine trying to get our superdelegates to vote the will of the caucus, but we were fully prepared to go into the going forward, and had hopes that we could win the nomination. That was before, again, our convention was in May, and as you know, there was elections later on. In California didn't come in till June, and things like that. But at that point, we were going full steam ahead.
And did you think that, by what mechanism did you think it was possible that Bernie could win the nomination at that point? Because obviously, even towards May, Hillary had a significant lead in the pledged delegate count, and there was sort of there was something of a push on the part of Bernie supporters to, like you mentioned, lobby superdelegates to change their vote, that kind of thing. I mean, what sort of contingencies did you think would arise that would have been good news for Bernie? I mean, even the FBI investigation at that point to Hillary was still unresolved.
Back in May, she wasn't all that far ahead in pledged delegates, and a lot of the pledged delegates that she had come on early on in drop dead red states, which did her absolutely no good in November anyway. And we were pretty confident that it was going to come down, as it did, to the superdelegates. And we were making the case. There were polls out back then before the convention, the national convention, that said you put Hillary up against Trump and it's a dead heat. You put Trump against Bernie and Bernie wins hands down. We knew that. We tried to get the superdelegates to do that. We thought we thought that we should be able to go at least 3 supers for Bernie in Maine. We ended up with only 1. But that was the tactic was tell the truth, let people know that he's got a strong following, and that I basically from the minute she won the nomination, Trump already had the nomination. It was clear to me that we were going to be looking at President Trump. I at no time did I think that she was going to win this thing. And a lot of us saw that coming. And, the fact that the mainstream media just was so stupid, that notwithstanding, we knew it all came down to the convention, and we tried our best to convince the superdelegates of that. We couldn't, so away we went.
Right. And actually, probably nowhere in the country is the fact that Bernie was definitely a stronger candidate for the general election more evident than in Maine, where Hillary ended up losing the 2nd congressional district, and Maine split its electoral votes for the first time in its history.
That's right.
And it's really hard to imagine that having happened if Bernie were the nominee. I think he would have easily won Maine. She only won Maine overall by something like 2 or 3 points, right? So it was
that's right.
Really, really close.
Yeah, it was 48, 46 or something like that.
Yeah.
The interesting thing too is that if all of the Johnson votes, the Libertarian votes that went to Johnson had gone to Trump, Trump would have won the state, and Clinton would have had the 1st district, and Trump would have had the 2nd district as he did, and also would have had the total. So he would have come out of Maine with 3 delegates instead of 3 electors instead of 1. If all of those Johnson people had voted with Trump, and if all of the Stein people voted with Clinton, it wouldn't have made a difference at all.
Right. And was that a scenario? I mean, was that scenario in Maine in particular something that you envisioned back in May, June, July?
Yeah. You didn't. I mean, you just had to drive around. I mean, for every Clinton sign you saw 3 Trump signs. We had some referendums on here. We had a gun control referendum, and there was no way that was going to pass in the 2nd district, and that brought out a lot of folks also. And we had some, we had a ranked choice voting and a couple of other things that you think would bring out the liberal folks, and it did down in the 1st district. But there are, when it comes to politics, there are definitely 2 Maines, and they are as different as night and day many times.
And marijuana legalization passed in Maine by the narrowest of margins, so that's a silver lining.
Yep.
When you stood to be an elector, I mean, it's funny, if you go to your website, it's pretty bare bones, which I kind of find amusing in a way. But it says that you'll vote for Bernie on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, whatever ballot. I mean, was that a reference to the convention, or was that a reference to the Electoral College?
No, that was my ad. I don't do a big website. That was the ad that I placed in the convention brochure. That was all. That was running for national delegate.
Right. That's what I thought.
I threw that up there, and I haven't done anything with that page since.
Yeah. You shouldn't. It's good. It's good the way it is. So I mean, when you stood to be an elector, was it in your mind at that point that there could be a scenario whereby you would choose to defy the will of the state's voters or the congressional district's voters? Was that something you had actively considered at the time?
No, when I ran for elector, I fully expected I was going to be a delegate to the national convention, and we were going to nominate Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders was going to win in November, and I was going to vote for the winner of the winner of the presidential race, and that was going to be Bernie. That's where I was in May. That's where my head was at then. So there was no this thing to vote for for Bernie. I mean, that happened within 3 or 4 days before December 19th.
Oh, really? So, what was that thought process like? How did that come together?
Well, I assume you've seen this video of my speech, and
Yeah.
basically it was, I mean, there was a lot of talk about, everybody's all scared about Trump and yada yada, and there was, well, we're going to get 38 Trump electors to vote for Clinton so that she gets the presidency, and there was no way that was going to happen. And then there was a lot of talk about, well, they'll get enough electors, 37 of them will bail on Trump, and they'll pick Kasich or Bush or somebody, and that will throw it into the House of Representatives. So where I started this was, well, if 37 of them sit on their hands and abstain and don't do anything, and with the intention of leaving it up to the House, I thought, whoops, my phone is just dying here. I'm going to have to go plug it in. Don't go away.
Okay, I could still hear him, but he went away momentarily. So hopefully, everyone is riveted and ready to hear the rest of the story. Sort of a cliffhanger. Wow, great. Yeah, well, I'm not going to do a song and dance at this point. I have no other real entertainment to offer. I'm not going to strip naked. I don't know what to do. Can I make funny faces? Let me check the tweets here and see if anybody said anything interesting. Sort of doubtful, but not much else to do at this point. Tell him his speech was awesome. Okay, so somebody says that his speech, David's speech, was awesome. So I'll let him know when he returns, which hopefully should be soon. La la la. So this is the peril of live streaming. You have nothing at the ready to fill gaps or lulls. So I have to just stare at my mug for however long it takes for him to get his phone plugged in. And now he's gone. Hopefully he knows to just click the link that I sent him initially. Let me email him really quick. Hold on. Or you know what? I'm going to invite him again. Hold on. That's what I'll do. So I just sent him another invite, which he said popped up on his phone rather than his computer for God knows what reason. So hopefully he sees that same thing pop up imminently and comes back. Otherwise, we'll be left hanging, which will be sad. Sad with the exclamation mark. So, I guess in totally unrelated news, after many complaints about the audio quality of these YouTube videos, today I received what I thought was going to be a working new laptop. Actually, my first new laptop in 9 years. I've had a sort of a Chromebook that I've used for the past year or so, which is fine, but it's not like a robust system at all. So I had a new laptop arrive today, and sure enough, it just doesn't connect to Wi-Fi. So just unbelievable. I wasted so many hours today on the phone with these Dell people. I guess I should have known better than to go with Dell, knowing their reputation, but everywhere I checked online, this particular laptop was really highly recommended and seemed to be, viewed as a high performing computer. So I don't know. So I'm just gonna go get another Mac tomorrow, I guess. I had a Mac between 07 and 2015, and technically still works, but it's sort of fried. So I know everyone is thrilled by this discussion. Hopefully, this guy's going to come back. Let me call him real quick. One moment. Hello? Let me try inviting him one more time. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Okay, he writes, phone dead trying to use laptop. Okay, fair enough. Okay, so there are signs of life. Fear not. I guess I can check my let me check the YouTube comments. I know that's a fearful prospect in a way, but worth killing a little bit of time, I guess. And one reason why I wanted to get a new laptop, not solely because of the complaints, was also because whenever I do a YouTube chat on this Chromebook, the system completely slows down, and I can barely even access Twitter, and that's just a real bummer. So I thought today would be my inaugural chat with new hardware, but was not to be. Let me just see if he replied. Yep. Hello. Hey. All right, no problem. Are you on a? Huh. Can you just plug your phone in somewhere and just use that? Could you maybe just plug your phone in somewhere and just go back to that? Okay, yeah, so it's plugged in. All right, so I'm just going to send you the invitation again, and hopefully it'll pop up in the same spot that it did the first time. Well, I mean, we could, but if it, if you have to, yeah, the phone worked. All right, I'm going to send the invitation again. Hopefully it pops up. Okay. Okay, so that was I'm going to send the invitation again because it popped up on his phone for whatever reason. So hopefully that happens again. Here he is again. Yeah. Hello? Okay. Yeah, it's just the same thing that I did the first time. Okay. Okay. Hopefully this works. How long has this interlude been at this point? What, 7 minutes? Not bad. You can live. You'll live. Yeah, doesn't work? Really? Huh. Hmm. Can you go to can you go onto your email on your phone? Yeah. Okay. I mean, do you have the email set up on your phone? Okay, so the okay, so the uh okay. Okay. So there's no other there's no emails in Gmail saying like hangout invitation or something like that? It's like from Google. Yeah, check social. Okay. Do you have the So when it first popped up, when we first started, what actually popped up? Huh. And when I just tried that again recently, it said call ended or something. No, that was through the computer. That was through. I sent that to your. I sent that through Google, through the YouTube chat. Yeah, go to that. Go to that. Yeah, that's me. Yeah. Yeah, allow that. You want to allow everything. And this is you on the computer, right? Okay. Eh, yes, that's it. Okay, here you are.
Okay.
All right, you're in here. I'm going to hang up the phone now.
Okay, now, are you hearing me okay without?
Yeah, I'm hearing you, but you got to switch on your video camera.
Switch on, okay. Switch on the camera. What's this? Allow this.
See, at the top there should be a little camera logo. Do you see that?
I'm not seeing it in this picture here.
Toward the top of the screen, it should or there should be somewhere where it says turn camera on or off.
On this, on this screen where you are, or
Um,
I, I had the camera going a while back because I was testing it, but I don't see. There's the Hangout.
yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you fine. It's just
I open the wallet. No, we don't want that. What else have we got here?
do you see at the very top? So there should be some options at the top. So like you could hang up the call, settings, that kind of thing in the top and the middle.
Well, maybe I'm on some. Okay, there's the camera. How's that?
Yeah.
Is that better? Turn camera on.
Yes, click that.
So is it on now or not? No, yeah, my light's on the camera now.
Okay, maybe it's turning on. I can
Okay.
still only hear you.
I got to bring your speakers up a little bit too here because I'm. All right. Now the problem is this computer is on. So you're not seeing me yet.
No, I'm only hearing you.
Okay.
Is the camera blocked?
No, the camera has been working and if I use the communications utility, it is working. So
Huh.
turn camera on.
Yeah, there. Turn it on.
Well, no matter what I do, the icon has still got the bar across it.
So even if you click it, it's still got the bar across?
Yeah, it says, I click it and it says turn camera off. I click it and it says turn camera on. But it's,
Okay, let's just do audio only then. That's fine.
well, we can go, do you want to try the phone again? I mean,
if you want to just call one more, we can try one more call on the phone if you want to do that. I mean, that appeared to be working for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, let's just go. Let's just go with it now. I mean, I think people. I think it's okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's just do audio. So I'm trying to think where we left off.
Well, you were asking about whether I thought things was going to go the right way, and I said, yeah. When I became an elector, I fully expected I'd be casting a vote for Bernie Sanders in December.
I mean, but did the thought enter your mind? I mean, did you even try to wrestle at that point with the prospect of voting of Hillary being the nominee? I mean, did you run through the scenarios where that might be the situation?
Well, not back then. No. I just I mean, obviously, I was going to go with the winner, and we sort of hope that if she did become the nominee, that it would be that we could support her as the candidate. So,
yeah.
But my intention had been that Bernie was going to be the nominee and Bernie was going to win. That's where I was at.
So you said that you only decided a couple days before December 19th to actually.
Right. And that's because there was all this talk about all these unfaithful electors that were on the Trump side, and that he wasn't going to get the nomination. I mean, I never believed that 38 Republican electors would support Clinton, but it sounded like there was a possibility that he would lose his 270, and it would go to the House of Representatives. So at that point, I thought, well, if it goes to the House of Representatives, they get to pick from the top three. So wouldn't it be fun if the top three were Trump, Clinton, and Sanders?
Right.
And so I said, so I thought about voting for him that way. But there were a bunch of organizations that were working to try and coordinate this. Most of them, there was a place called Electors Trust, which was a website that was set up. And what they were really doing was offering legal assistance to try and help Trump electors who would go someplace else. But they were polling as many electors as they could. And I know AP was polling electors. And I stayed in touch with those folks, and it became obvious over the weekend that there was no way that it certainly wasn't she was going to get 38 votes from Republicans, and it was unlikely that he was going to fall below 270. I mean, he had, there just weren't going to be 37 Republican electors who were going to bail on it. So at that point, it was a done deal. Hillary Clinton, there was nothing I could do to make Hillary Clinton the winner, and there was just there was no path for her. And so at that point, I figured, well, I'm sort of a free agent here. I mean, no matter what I do, it will not impact the results of the election. There's nothing I can do, and either way, that would make a difference. So why not cast a vote that means something? And we had such, especially these young kids and actually some older people too, but people who had never been involved in politics, who came in voluntarily because of Bernie. And I thought, well, the least I can do is give them a little bit of encouragement and say, look, I know you're depressed. I know you think that the Democratic Party crapped all over you, that it wasn't fair, and you're not respected and everything. And I want you to know that there are those of us here who appreciate what you did, who support your work for Bernie, do respect you, and want you to know that if you come back to the Democratic Party, or if you choose to stay in, that there is room for you and that we need you. So I voted that way primarily so that I had a platform to get that message out.
And it's pretty ironic, right? Because the whole point of this Vote Your Conscience movement, or the Hamilton Electors Group, or all of these various efforts to sort of finagle with the Electoral College. The idea was supposed to have been that it would deprive Trump of vote. But what ended up happening is that actually more people ended up abandoning Hillary. For
Well,
whatever
that's right, because she was abandonable. There was, you could vote for Jabba the Hutt if you wanted to. There was, she was completely lost at that point. So there was no loss that you could give her. So then I think some people decided, well, I'm sure there were other electors like me who became electors long before the national convention. And so they just decided, well, I need to make a statement here.
But I mean, so this probably wouldn't have crossed your mind if everything had just gone according to plan and the Electoral College this year was just the formality that it had always been. I mean, you sort of reevaluated this because there was this renewed effort around what is the role of an elector and all these other sort of factors, right?
Yeah, probably. I mean, because the whole thing about being involved in politics is you got to pay attention. So if you started paying attention, you could see that there was a possibility of different things happening. And at that point, having been involved in the Sanders campaign, it just seemed to me, well, let's go and make a statement here and see if we can bring some of these new voters back in who got very involved in working in electoral politics, but then got very distressed. And I'm sure a lot of them didn't show up in November because they didn't think there was anybody wanted them. And basically their disappointment in July turned out to be a loss for the party in November.
And was any part of your decision motivated by an opposition to Hillary, or at least wanting to signal your discontent with the way that she ran her campaign?
Well, I didn't like the way she ran her campaign. She was, I don't think it was a very effective campaign. And the thing about Secretary Clinton is that from the start of her, from day one, everyone in the galaxy had an opinion of her. All minds were made up. So she had no place to go. So she ended up running on two platforms. I'm not Donald Trump, and it's going to be a historic election. She talked about the most progressive platform the Democrats have ever had. Well, we know where that came from. That was part of the deal to sort of appease Bernie and said, well, and Bernie did a great job getting that in there, but it's a party platform, and I didn't see her talking about a lot of it, and I have no faith that I think things would have gone right back the way it was. I mean, she ran on the campaign that nothing's going to change. I'm Obama, but in a different skin. That was the basis of her campaign, and I'm not Trump. And there was just no excitement there. She's unlike her husband even. She's a zero charisma kind of candidate. I thought she would get a little shrill at times. And I understand, and she just wasn't talking to the people that Trump was talking to or the people that Bernie was talking to. I mean, she, just all of those folks in the Midwest with jobs and things like that. I just don't think that she had a sense of it.
And did you vote for her?
Was a 1% candidate.
Did you vote for her in November?
No,
you did not.
I did not.
Who did you vote for?
I voted for Jill Stein. And I voted for Jill Stein not because, again, it would not have. I knew it was not going to make any difference in the 2nd District, Maine. I mean, there was just no way. If you took every Jill Stein vote that Clinton got in the 2nd District, Maine, and that Stein got and gave it to Clinton, it would have made zero difference. The reason I voted for Jill Stein was I was distressed about the way they handled the debates. That whole presidential debate thing is just total crap. She and Johnson should have been in the debates. And so there was an effort that Stein was never going to become president, but there was a possibility that she could have gotten 5% nationwide. And that would have allowed the Green Party in future elections maybe have a little, do a little better with fundraising and to get into the debate. The big problem, and I think it's criminal, is this fake debate, presidential debate we've got, where you don't get to hear all the candidates, and they're not debates anyway. They basically are you know, the only thing we didn't have in any of these debates was Jerry Springer throwing chairs. I mean, it was just they were all just terrible. But that's the reason I did that was, you know, and it was not an easily made decision. But again, by the time we got into November, and you're looking around here, there was just no way. She had zero path in Maine 2nd District. Clinton did, to win. So again, it was, you know, why not do something else with your vote? It was the exact same thing as in December.
Yeah.
Just a different reason.
Mm-hmm. Just to let you know, somebody tweets in to say that for me to tell you that your speech was awesome. So there's a Bernie supporter wanting to thank you. So just wanted to relay that real quick.
Thank you.
So just kind of walk me through what happened the day of the Electoral College vote. I mean, you put out a Facebook post that morning, right?
Yeah, I announced that I was going to do that. Everybody involved knew that I was going to do that. The Secretary of State and his crew knew it. All the other electors knew it. The interesting thing about is Betty Johnson, who I nominated to be president of the college, was not one of the original. She was originally the 2nd District elector, and so she lost out. And then one of the other at-large elector, who was in Florida, got bollocksed up on his flights and stuff and couldn't get here. So we said, well, he let us know, I'm not going to be there, and so you will have a vacancy. So I said, well, let's put Betty back in. So we put her back in. But when we got there, the 4 electors, the 3 Democrats and the 1 Republican, caucused with the Secretary of State and also the attorney for the Electoral College that we had appointed, and said, look, here's the deal. Our state law, you're going to take an oath to uphold the state law, and the state law says I had to vote with the winner. And you know, so if you vote for anybody else, the vote will be challenged, and the chair will rule the vote is invalid. And so we'll do it again, and then you can cast your vote for Bernie, and then we'll vote. You can do it again and vote for Clinton, which is what I did. Now I could have said, well, supposing I just keep voting for Sanders, and they said, well, eventually, because you keep violating your oath, and you're not going, you know, you're not following the law, and you're an elected official now, and your elected officials are supposed to follow the law, we'd have to remove you, which is what happened to the gentleman in Minnesota.
So basically, they would have what, the police come in and remove you?
Well, it's like any other elected thing. The body is in charge of its own members. So the other 3 members of the Electoral College basically could have voted to impeach me. Interestingly,
but was there was there another alternate available?
No, there are no alternates. There's no alternates.
Huh.
Not in Maine. In other words, if a vacancy was created, they could have just picked anybody. They could have just said, okay, you know, some Democrat in the audience stand up and that's going to vote for Clinton, and they would have elected that person right then and there.
So they could
basically was the same procedure we did with Betty after we knew that Sam Shapiro was not coming. It's just that we had arranged it in advance, but you couldn't vote her in until there was a vacancy. And if there's the elected doesn't show up, then you can vote somebody else.
So once there's a vacancy, or once they vote to remove you, they could just pick anybody off the street to come in?
Exactly. It's like picking a jury. Yep.
Huh.
Send the deputy out in the street and get somebody. Presumably it would have to be a Democrat. I mean, and there was all kinds of people. This was in the House chambers. It's not like it would have been hard to find somebody.
Right. Did you ever consider voting for Sanders over and over again?
Well, I did briefly, but as I just explained, if I had done that, it never would have counted, and eventually I would have been removed. Had I been removed, I would not have been able to give my speech at the end of the event. And so the whole reason for voting for Bernie was to be able to give that speech to tell all these new voters who would come into the party, please don't go away, we need you back. So it made perfect sense. Cast a vote for Bernie, give yourself a basis to give the speech, let them say it's your vote's out of order, have another ballot, vote for Clinton, and we go through the thing, and then, okay, everybody give you speeches, and then bang, I can stand up and do that. Now, the interesting thing is, our caucus, college convened at 2 o'clock Eastern time. Hawaii convened at 7 o'clock Eastern time. And so unbeknownst to me, there was somebody streaming this thing, and that's how my speech got on the internet. I didn't even know that was happening. And a guy, one of the electors in Hawaii, was watching our college session while he was waiting for his, saw the speech and thought, geez, that's a good idea. I'm going to vote for Bernie too. And it turns out in Hawaii, there is no law that says you have to vote a certain way. So he voted for Bernie, and his vote counted, and it was transmitted. It will be transmitted to the House of Representatives. And on January 6th, when the House opens the ballots, it will be counted. So there will be one vote for Bernie Sanders. And had I not done that, he would have not probably done it, because he did it based on my speech.
Did he get in touch with you, or how did you find out?
I've not talked with him directly other than to email back and forth, but I have a good friend in Hawaii who I met at the Democratic National Convention in Boston in 2004. We were both Kucinich people. And I've kept in touch with him, and he emailed me right after the Hawaii vote and told me what had happened. And said this guy watched your interview, speech live on the internet, and decided he could do it, and his vote counted. So that's how I knew about that.
So did you think there was any scenario in Maine where the vote could have counted? Because, my reading of the statute is that, you might have committed a violation of the law in voting for Sanders, because, the statute stipulates that you're required to vote for whoever was the winner.
Right.
But still, I think there's interpretation where they could have nevertheless counted the vote for Sanders, and then you would have just had to face the legal repercussions, whatever they might have been.
Right.
It didn't seem like a foregone conclusion to me that they would have necessarily had to rule the vote invalid. I know it sounded like a legally murky area, but we could have gone down that road, except that the other two Democrats, there's only three of us, okay? And you've got Betty, who came in, Betty was a Clinton delegate to the National Convention. She's a longtime party person. She's treasurer of the state Democratic Party, and she's a solid Clinton person. The third elector is Diane Denk, who in fact is our national committee woman and was a Bernie delegate to the National Convention. So what we would have had here is, and the fourth elector was the Republican, who was the chair of the Republican Party. And he made it very clear that if we got into a fighting match with the chair, that he was going to abstain. He said, I don't have a dog in this hunt. It's going to be the three of you work it out. So it would have been a situation where I voted that way. The chair, Betty, ruled that the vote was invalid. I could have contested the ruling of the chair. Had I done that, we would have had to have a vote on upholding the vote of the chair. The Republican abstains. I obviously vote to overrule the chair. Diane Denk is a wonderful person and was a strong Bernie person, but she's also the Democratic National Committee woman from Maine. And she was in a situation where it would have been pretty impractical for her to do that. So she would have voted
to uphold the ruling of the chair. Therefore, it would have been a tie vote, and it would have been broken by the chair who'd made the decision in the first place. So, and that just would have gotten ugly, and it would have kept going on, and then eventually, I might have lost my vote. So the proper thing to do, because I wasn't there to raise a ruckus, and I wasn't there to, start a riot or do anything. I wanted to be able to give my speech to tell those voters who voted for Bernie, please don't go away, stay engaged in politics. That was the sole purpose of me voting the way I did. And in order to do that, I had to stay in my seat, and so I could give that speech, which has now gone viral all over the place. Right. And people are tweeting you and saying it was a great speech. That would not have happened had I not done it the way I did it.
Yeah, and the Minnesota elector wasn't so fortunate because he also attempted to vote for Sanders, but he was ejected, so he didn't have.
He voted for Sanders, and he was ejected because they ruled you violated your oath, you're out the door.
Yeah, so he didn't get to stick around and give a speech.
No, he didn't. And again, this was an arrangement that we made amongst ourselves and with the Secretary of State. I mean, none of this was a surprise to him. For those of us involved.
So it was sort of a gentleman's agreement then that you would be permitted to give the speech afterwards.
Exactly. And I will tell you that the Secretary of State was an endorser of Bernie also.
Oh, okay.
He was Secretary of State, but he publicly endorsed Bernie. But and he actually was going to be he was going to be on rules, I think, nationally, but that didn't work out. But he had his Secretary of State hat on that day, not his Bernie hat, and and basically he said, look, I'm here to uphold the law, and this is what we're going to do. But it was appropriate, and I'm thankful that they said, yeah, this is how we're going to do it, and yeah, I think I had no problem.
I think it's something that came to the surprise of some. Including me, because I had never observed one of these meetings prior to Monday. I was actually in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and saw the Republicans, cast their votes for Trump there. But what happens is actually, once the electors are elected, they're convened as a body, and then the body is governed by parliamentary rules. So you can technically make motions.
Yes.
And so on and so forth. So it's not. So the rules can be sort of made up on the fly.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, different states have different rules. We have a procedure that's pretty much written out, and we basically, you're in the legislative chamber, so you use the rules of the legislature, and that's primarily parliamentary procedure.
Right.
But there's nothing magic about the ceremony. We could have got together at McDonald's and written the votes on a napkin, and it would have accomplished the same thing. We would have had to sign the paperwork. There's formal paperwork that you have to sign that gets transmitted to the federal government and to the Secretary of State and to the chief judge of the district court and all that. I mean, this is you are signing official documents, but in terms of how the procedure works, that's entirely up to each state.
Yeah, because I mean, at that point, you're an elected official, so it's within your rights to set the terms for, how you actually go about.
That's right, and I'm also fortunate that I live in Maine, which has had 4 electors. If I was in California, I don't think that 55 electors got to give speeches after that electoral college.
No, and if you were in California or something, it's much harder to come to a sort of gentleman's agreement where you're permitted to do your thing, within certain constraints. In California, it probably has to be a lot more rigid.
That's right. This is a state where we call our members of Congress by their first names. That doesn't happen in a lot of places.
Right.
Yeah, and likewise back. They all, we all know everybody. Everybody's a neighbor here.
Right. So, one thing that struck me is, although you did eventually vote according to the expressed will of the people who elected you to be an elector, in voting for Sanders on the first ballot, I think there's a reasonable interpretation that would hold that would construe your initial vote as a violation of the law. So under Maine, under the Maine election law statute, any violations are a Class E crime,
Yep.
which is a misdemeanor, and it carries 6 months, punishable by 6 months in prison and a $1,000 fine.
That's
Now,
right.
I've mentioned on Twitter and elsewhere that it's almost impossible to imagine any prosecutor actually bringing those charges. But I mean, do you think that your act does technically constitute a criminal offense? I mean, and if you're not comfortable, answering that question, that's understandable. But I mean, how would you react to that?
It was a violation. It was a misdemeanor, and the attorney general was in the room too. She was also party to this, so everybody knew what was going on. But the speed limit from my house to the state house is 70 miles an hour, and I suspect I might have topped that once in a while on the way down. So. Yeah, technically it was a violation of state law, and I got off with a warning.
Right.
It's no different than going 75 and a 70.
Well, going 75 and a 70 couldn't land you in prison for 6 months.
Yeah, unless you did it, you've been convicted for the third time.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, well, I mean, and
or you were driving on a suspended license. Or
yeah,
like that.
but again, we're all, we knew all of the people in the room. That's the way it is here. And everybody knew what I wanted to do. They had all seen the speech a couple of days in advance, the first drafts of it. They went, the Secretary of State Dunlop came up with a good scenario to accomplish my goal and make sure that everything was done legally, and that the votes that were cast were legitimate. And so, you can call it, yeah, I guess, technically it was a violation of the law. But it was basically no harm, no foul. I mean, it was just.
So did you take any precautions, in the event that some kind of legal action could be taken against you, or was that such a remote possibility that it wasn't even worth?
Well, as I said, I'd been in touch with Electors Trust, which was set up solely for the purpose of that. I hadn't said, I'm going to need your help, but I also had not with me at the time, but I had another Sanders delegate, national delegate, who's a longtime friend of mine, who's an attorney, who said that he would gladly represent me if it came to that. But yeah, no, I did not have a check for $1,000 made out to Treasurer of State in my pocket.
Well, I mean, it would go to trial. I mean,
that's right. That's right. Yeah, if it went to trial,
you wouldn't be paying a fine that day.
If it went to trial, I had people queued up, and I think it would have. We would have kept appealing it, and eventually we probably would have asked the U.S. Supreme Court to say, let's settle this. Can a state tell an elected official how to vote or not? And I think we would have ended it right there. So, and the people that pass these laws that don't want people to do things like I do, they damn well know that's how it would come if it ever got that far.
And and it's such a hazy area of law that there probably would be it would probably be worthwhile to bring it to the attention of higher courts, just because people don't have a clear idea of what their rights are in these sorts of situations. So
well, that's right, and this is no different than certainly a state legislature would not pass a law that says a U.S. senator has to vote a certain way, and it's exactly the same thing. The U.S. senator is elected by the state of Maine and is sent to Washington to cast a vote in Washington. And that's just what the electoral college members are elected by the state of Maine, a different subset, but elected in the state of Maine, and are charged with one thing of actually casting the real vote for president. So you can argue whether a state can, am I a state official or a federal official? I mean, there's, that argument would have to be settled, but can the state impose legislation that would tell an elected official how they have to vote?
Right.
It's on the books now, but that's the only law on the books now in the state of Maine like that. Everything else is members of the legislature or the U.S. Senate or Congress can do whatever they want. They, you know, and there are consequences for their votes, but they're not breaking any laws.
Yep. And have you considered that you probably have avenues for redress in this area? So you could definitely be depicted as an injured party. So your right to exercise your vote according to your individual judgment was impeded. So you could bring suit against, I don't know, the Secretary of State, against some other state entity, and that might actually be a really interesting legal question to be
Yeah.
wrestled with.
Yeah, a civil case would be a little bit more difficult. You would have to show that I'm aggrieved, and I've just told you that I'm not, because I accomplished what I wanted to do. That would be easier to do had I gone through it. And if somebody wants to do that at some point and get arrested and go to court, and then you can appeal it up, and you're in the criminal realm, which would be.
I still think, I'm sort of I'm not a lawyer, but I have some legal, I have some legal experience in a sense, just as an amateur, and I would think that you would have some standing, because although you voted according, you ended up voting the way you did, you were still sort of inhibited from freely exercising your choice. I mean, so I think that's just to say, I think there's a case to be made that you are actually an injured party and you do have standing, but that would be totally up to you. I just think it would be an interesting area of law to explore, and it would be useful because people really didn't have a clear idea of what the role of electors were.
Well, it would be, yeah, I mean, if it's a pretty simple case. My First Amendment right was violated. My right of saying Bernie Sanders was violated. So you could make the case. I mean, and if some lawyer wants to go out there and say, I'll take that case, I'll happily be the plaintiff, but we've got a farm to run here, and we got another month when the snow goes away, it starts coming, and I don't intend to make this my life's work. But
yeah, understandable. And there's actually there's a guy in Colorado who may well face actual criminal penalty. I don't know if you saw it, but the Secretary of State of Colorado referred the matter of an elector who was ejected to the Attorney General. So he might be a criminal investigation.
Yeah. Well, the other reason it wasn't going to happen in Maine, as I said, the Attorney General's in the room, right? And she's being talked about as a candidate for governor. And that's no secret. And I think the last thing she wanted to do was tick off 67% of the activist Democrats. So she wasn't going to take it. So she would have kicked the can down the road to the county district attorney, and I don't think she would have taken it either. So
right.
Probably there wasn't going to be, I don't. The other interesting thing is that the sergeant at arms, who would have been the one who escorted me out of the hall,
right.
Is a guy that I nominated to be the sergeant of arms. He's the Senate minority leader, and he's also Maine's Democratic National Committee man. So I mean, we were all,
Is he? I mean,
all the players were in the room.
Literally armed? Does he have arrest powers and that kind of thing?
What's that?
I mean, is he literally armed?
No,
He's not.
No.
Okay.
There was, the State House, the Maine State House is protected by Capitol Police and State Police, and there's, you have to go through a State Police security check like at an airport.
Right.
To get in, and there was 2 demonstrations going on outside. There was people urging the electors not to vote for Trump, and of course that only was one elector, and then that elector being the chair of the Republican Party, and the Republican Party's headquarters is about a 1-minute walk from the State House, so they all gathered there and walked over and walked through the crowd and went in. But on the inside, there was no disruption or anything on the inside. But no, the sergeant at arms is just a ceremonial police, but the cops are not far away.
Right. Well, I definitely think that there's a case to be made here, like I said, and it's a fascinating area of law to explore. Just because I think after this election cycle, people have a different understanding of what the Electoral College is supposed to accomplish. I mean, prior to 2016, it wasn't expected that any significant portion of electors would be exercising their own individual discretion, or be subject to lobbying campaigns, and especially the Republican electors had their information posted online and received tens of thousands of emails and letters and phone calls and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's an area of law that is applicable nationwide, and people don't really have a cogent understanding of what rights an elector has, and maybe this will actually impact who runs for an elector in the future. So there's a lot of sort of murky territory here that could be worked out, and I can perfectly understand you not wanting to be the guinea pig, but
Right. I mean, I'd be happy to be the guinea pig, but I don't know that it's going to happen. But the other thing is that this year was a prime example of why the Electoral College is a good idea.
oh, okay.
Because people did, there was some concern about this, and it made people think about, is this the person I want to elect and all that. You hear all of this stuff about, well, we want to have a popular election, which would be an absolute disaster in this country. I mean, it's just mind-boggling.
So this is sort of an unpopular opinion, because right now it's become widely believed that the Electoral College is a relic of a past era, and, it's subversion of democracy. But you don't agree. You think
No, well,
you think there's some utility to it.
This is the United States of America. Okay, this is not the United Peoples of America. It was never set up for a popular vote. The whole deal is the same thing with the House of Representatives and the United States Senate. The individual states get to decide who they want to send down there. Now, if we went to a popular vote, the first thing that would happen is the only campaigning would be done in California, and we might as well move the entire United States capital to Sacramento, because that would be where it's all done. If you went to a popular vote, for those that are worried about counting the votes and ballot fraud and all that kind of stuff, I mean, everybody says that Clinton, won by 3 million votes. Well, she won by 3.5 million votes in California. So that means in the other 49 states, she lost. So if you did that, if you've got a 3.5 million point lead there in that state, and I want to put a Republican in, and I've got a popular vote, all I have to do is bugger enough votes in California to take that down, say, to 3 million instead of 3.5. So I flip, and nobody's going to notice. And then I go to a heavy Republican state that normally votes 67% for the Republicans, and I run it up to 69% by flipping some votes in the machines or whatever. No one's going to notice that. And so, and eventually we're going to want to, well, it's a national election, we're all together, so let's just have it all go into one big computer. So the potential to really bugger the way the votes are counted. And elections are not about who votes, it's about who counts the votes. The potential for that is serious. But the other thing you have to understand is, if we're going to have one jurisdiction to vote, then the 14th Amendment says that everybody has to be treated the same. Now, if I'm in New York and I'm a voter and I show up and they say, oh, you've been taken off the voting list because we thought you were a felon, and I say, put me back on the voting list, and they say, oh no, you can't do that because you had to register to vote 30 days in advance, I'm going to say, that guy in Maine can walk into the polling place at 7:59 on election night and register to vote. I want the same rights he has. And if I'm in a prison because I've been convicted of a felony, and I say I want to vote, and they say, no, you can't vote because you're a felon, and even after you've done your time, you can't vote because you're a felon, I get to say, those guys in Maine there's people in the Maine prison doing absentee ballots, because in Maine a felon can vote while they're incarcerated. I want the same rights as that guy. So, and everything from how my absentees are handled. In other words, if you had a popular vote, if the United States became one voting jurisdiction, all of the rules would have to be the same all across the country, which means people who want to vote for, who want to push for popular vote, better get serious about writing federal election laws and all the details, because you cannot have 51 jurisdictions like we have now with different rules about how the same person gets to the House of Representatives, or 50 jurisdictions with different rules, completely different rules, ballot access, voting times, primary dates, all of the stuff that's different in every state to get two people to the same US Senate. And we can do that because the states are allowed to send whoever they want and do however they want. And you're not, since the election's held in the state, the rules in this, everybody in the state is treated the same. But once you get outside of that, you don't, it doesn't matter. But if we have the same jurisdiction for the entire country, everybody's the same voter and they all have to be treated the same, and we're going to have uniform election rules all over the country. So it will be a mess.
You know, I think it's pretty much a moot issue anyway, because, you know, notwithstanding some of these proposals having to do with a national popular vote compact and that kind of thing.
10 states that are all severely blue states. Those are
but in order to, you know, actually abolish the Electoral College, you would have to have a constitutional amendment. And
well,
that's an incredibly arduous process, and I don't think a lot of the people, you know, mostly liberals and some leftists who are agitating for it, want to put in the hard work, you know, really the decades of work that would be required to enact a constitutional amendment.
That's right. Doing the amendment, you know, and then you say, well, we're going to have a constitutional convention. Well, if we're going to do that, then maybe we can settle this corporation of people thing too. But the compact is a workaround on that, because the compact says there still will be electors,
right?
And the rule is going to be, instead of the rule in Maine being you got to vote with the winner in your state, the rule is going to be you got to vote with a national winner.
Right.
And
so
again, the states have the right to do it any way they want.
Right. So there wouldn't be abolition of the Electoral College
that would
at
still
all.
be,
It would just
the federal law would be exactly the same under this compact, but you just have to wait and see, well, okay, as goes California, so goes the union.
And you would still have this issue of whether electors are bound by that law in the first place. So
well, I mean, that again would come down to individual states, but you then get, you know, you start to make the point, well, do they have to, you know, do you run into an equal protection thing there?
Right. So as long as you have an Electoral College, no matter what kind of workaround you come up with, there's still going to be this issue of specific individuals are going to be elected and have to meet to cast their formal votes.
Right.
So the issue that you grappled with and that some others grappled with is still going to be a live issue, notwithstanding whether the compact is adopted. So you would have to actually get rid of the Electoral College wholesale to totally remove that element, and to do that would require a constitutional amendment.
Well, yeah, if you wanted to
get that happening.
If you wanted to get rid of it totally, yes, it would be a second amendment. You'd have to change the amend the Constitution. But the whole point of the compact is you just do an end run around that, and everybody is told how to vote.
Right.
You know, which I don't think is, you know, I'm not sure is the best way to do it. Now, you know, right now we'll say, well, geez, you know, if we don't do it that way, we might get some crazy guy who gets elected as an elector, and then he goes off the rails and he does something wide like vote for Bernie Sanders, or, you know, or a Native American leader in Washington State. Well, is that any different than voting for your members of Congress and having them go off the rails? I mean, Ross Gronkowski, what's his name, the Wiener Weiner guy there in New York. I mean, how many crooked members of Congress have we put in there in the history of this country? So why would you think that the chances are any different, that you're not going to have a legitimate member of the Electoral College compared to some?
James Traficant was my favorite. Remember him?
Who's that?
Traficant.
Oh, Traficant. Oh, yeah. Traficant, you know.
He was a wild man.
He was from Youngstown. And you know, my wife is from Youngstown. We know Traficant.
Oh, okay.
And you know, and I used to, in another life, I did consulting work for newspapers. And one of the papers I worked in was the Sharon, Pennsylvania Herald. And Sharon is right on the border with Ohio. And every once in a while, Trafficant would get thrown out of the Youngstown Vindicator newsroom, and they say, "Don't come back. We don't want your press releases." So he'd just go across the border and go to Sharon, Pennsylvania, and you know, I was in there one day, and Trafficant walked in, and they said, "Well, he must have gotten thrown out of the Vindicator again. He's over bringing his press releases over here to Pennsylvania," because you know the two towns were like 10 minutes apart.
That's funny. And you know, he got out of prison. He was in
But,
prison
you know,
for like 8 years, right?
Yeah, and Trafficant,
And he
for
got
all
out,
of his,
he got out, and he ended up dying in a tractor accident.
yeah, yeah. And for all, you know, Trafficant's doing, I mean, I think guys have done worse. People have done worse, but there's, you know, there's been enough members of Congress and governors and everybody else. Politicians are no different than regular people.
Right.
In many
So,
ways.
so what kind of reaction did you receive in the aftermath of Monday? I know the clip of your video went viral. I mean, did you receive a lot of feedback, or how's it been?
It's been really good. I mean, I've had some people, you know, that complain, well, you didn't do it right and it's disrespectful, and you know, some guy writes emails and says you need a whack across the face, and I can't even tell what he's mad about. The folks that are not happy don't make a lot of sense. You can't really tell why they're upset, and a lot of them are just these trolly people that are just mad, you know, that comment on the newspaper stories. They're just mad at anything. But the reaction has been generally very positive. You know, I've gotten emails and phone calls from people I've never heard of. I've had young voters. I had a young woman from Los Angeles who only worked for Bernie very hard, but she only turned 18 after November 8th. But she wanted to know what she should do to stay involved. And I have a good friend in Los Angeles that's got ins in Sacramento and LA, and I just said, talk to this woman. She can give you an idea. So it's been pretty
sort of keep like a go-to guy for people who, you know, maybe are sort of aimless about what they should be doing now. So like your statement sort of drew those people to you, I guess, and you can maybe direct them to how to devote their energies going forward.
Yeah, and I'm telling people, you know, if you want to play in the Democratic Party and you want to do that, because if you know, like it or not, the political parties are what controls this country. You can't just hang around every 4 years and vote for candidate. Now that we've got your attention, you've got to join your county committee, and you've got to look forward to 4 years of maybe some boring meetings and all that, because you've got to get on the inside if you want to make these changes. I mean, the fight for the chair of the Democratic National Committee will be interesting. But I suspect that the Clintonites will maintain control there, because the Bernie people got involved in Bernie, but they didn't understand the other things that you have to do to sustain this movement. You have to join your town committee. You've got to get on the county committee so that you can elect members to the state committee. You've got to make sure you've got your people on the national committee. And when you get on the state committee, you've got to pick leaders that are progressive leaders, because, you know, the chair and the vice chair of every state committee is a superdelegate. You know, and so there's a lot of work involved, and it's hard for people that, you know, get excited around election time, and then all of a sudden it's boring. But that's, you know, that's the way democracy works. You got to pay attention. You got to keep paying attention, and that's been my advice to anybody that's asked me. I said, you know, pay attention, stay involved. Don't expect that it's going to be all exciting. You know, basically, I guess it's like, you know, if you're a cop, you know, you spend 90% of your time on stakeouts and 10% of the time on the arrest. So, you know, right. It's not it's not glamorous all the time, but it's work that needs to be done.
Well, I think that's sound advice. So, you sort of actually, the 2016 ended up having, I believe, the most faithless electors of any election since 1808, and it's the first election since 1796 where 6 or more individuals received an electoral vote.
Uh-huh.
So, sort of an interesting historical marker there that you were part in. I mean, is that something that you've thought about? I mean, you're going to be in the history books. Maybe
Well,
it's sort of a footnote, but still notable nevertheless.
yeah. I mean, I'd rather be known as growing great raspberries, but yeah, it is interesting, and of course, this is also the first time we've had a president who's not held elected office or been in the military.
Right.
You know, and it obviously would have been the first time we had a president whose gender was female if it had gone the other way. So,
or the first Jewish president.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So, I mean, there's there's history in every presidential election. This one just sort of, collected them a little bit more. But that was not, I wasn't looking at that. It took me a couple of months of following Bernie before somebody told me he was Jewish. So, I didn't even know that. And, that isn't, I mean, I don't think running for president, needs to be a historical event. It needs to be a good government event.
Right.
And I came into this because Bernie was talking about things that made sense to me. And,
right.
His approach was peaceful and sensible, and all that. Besides this Jane, I'm in love with Jane. She would have made the greatest first lady forever.
Yeah, I like her too.
She's just a wonderful person.
So, what do you grow up there? What's your farming situation?
We've got an organic farm, and it's basically strawberries, raspberries, blackberries. We do some cherry. We do tomatoes, and it's basically some fruits and vegetables. Some of it is pick your own, and some of it we wholesale to natural food places.
Okay. What is the protocol this time of year?
What is the what?
What is the protocol like this time of year in terms of farming?
For farming?
Yeah.
There are seed catalogs spread all over the table. We're planning what crops go in what fields. We're certified organic, so we have to tell our certifier precisely what crops are going in what fields. And you're also chasing down your markets to see, making sure to see what they want. And we are doing some planning to do a little bit more pick your own. So there's, that kind of setup. So there's we'll take Christmas off, but and we're building, you get to do work around the house that you don't get to do in the summertime.
Right. Okay. Well, very nice. It was good to talk to you. Congratulations on the notoriety of late. I'm sure a lot of people find this interesting. I know there was a lot of curiosity about your situation on Twitter and elsewhere.
Yeah.
So hopefully this will fill in the gaps for some people.
Okay. I apologize that I couldn't get my camera to work, but
it's okay. We got to look at you at the beginning, so that's good enough.
Yeah. So you can just keep replaying that loop of me talking through the whole thing.
Okay. Take care.
All right. Good to talk to you.
Bye.